Hey everyone, since my last video, our database of Terraforming Mars game logs has increased from about 15,000 to now more than 35,000 games. And we have 30 people contributing to collecting these game logs, so we've become sort of a data mining guild, if you will. And since last time, I've also introduced a few new pages to tfmstats.com, the website we're looking at right here. And today I wanted to have a look at milestones and awards. Now you might ask, what is there to say about milestones and awards, and milestones in particular? Like, you pay 8MC to get 5 points. It's super efficient, and it's the same for every milestone. So shouldn't this just be really good if you can claim one? But it's not that simple, which we'll soon see. So if I go to the milestones page here we have a table containing all of the milestones on the maps that are available on BGA. That will be Tharsis, Hellas, Elysium, Amazonas Planitia, and Vastitsa Borealis. Now, of course, not all of these maps have that many games, which we can see in the times claimed column here. So I'll primarily focus on Tharsis, which has by far the most number of games. But it's always cool to look at the numbers anyway. In the table we have the win rate of the players who claimed that milestone, how much ELO they gained on average after claiming the milestone, how many times it's been claimed, the average generation it was claimed, and the average ELO of the claimer. And on the left here we have our usual filters, which are about the same that we had for corporations, but here you can also filter for corporation. And I have some filters on already, like 2-player. I've excluded friendly mode games, I've excluded colonies, and so on. It's just like typical filters I would usually prefer to have on. So if I go ahead and select Tharsis here, where we have a decent number of games, the first thing that strikes me about these numbers is that every milestone here has a positive average ELO gain, Mayor just being 0.01, but still. And why is that? Well, of course, claiming a milestone is correlated with winning the game, because you're paying 8MC for 5 points. That's very good. So if you're not getting any milestones at all, it's probably not a good game for you usually. So just in general, being able to get 5 points for 8MC is correlated with gaining ELO and with winning. So most of the milestones here have positive win rates as well. So that one's really obvious, but some of these differences in the numbers between the different milestones may not be immediately obvious. For instance, we see that Builder is claimed the most times, almost twice as often as Mayor. So it's just much easier to get 8 building tags than to get 3 cities before all the milestones are taken. And if you look at the ELO gain and the win rates, it's quite different. So it ranges from a 68% win rate for Terraformer all the way down to 37.5 for Mayor. So claiming Mayor usually involves a loss more often than a win, which is interesting. But we also see here that the average ELO of the players that claim Mayor is much lower. So the explanation here would be that weaker players tend to overplay cities, and thus they can also claim Mayor more often than the stronger players, and weaker players tend to lose more often. But there's something more going on here. So if you look at Terraformer, it clearly has the best numbers in terms of performance, and Gardener is not that far behind in clear second, while the other milestones are just not as good. So why is that? Well, if you're getting 35 TR by Terraforming and being able to claim a milestone while doing so, you're getting the milestone for doing something you want to be doing anyway. Like, Terraforming is good. That's exactly what you want to do. Whereas getting 3 cities early, like for Mayor, usually not what you want to do. That's really expensive for not that many points. But we can also see that Gardener is claimed more often than Terraformer, and if you look at the average generation it was claimed, we have 6.7 for Gardener and 7.2 for Terraformer, which is the highest here. So while Terraformer is a great milestone to actually get, it's not always going to be available because it takes a while to get to 35 TR, while, you know, sometimes getting planner can be really fast for some players if you just like hoard cards early on and instead of playing them. And speaking of planner, I think that's an interesting one because while it can be good, it's often a sort of a trap to go for planner early. That's pretty much known by strong players. So if I, for instance, filter here by the number of generations, we see the average is 5.7. So what if I look for planner claims that are at the latest in generation 4? Oops, this is actually the filter for how many generations the game lasted. This is for, it says played generation, it should say claimed. Filter here for 4. You see Terraformers almost never claimed by generation 4, while planner like over 2,000 times. And the win rate is not great. It's not horrible, but if I go down to like say generation 3, now you see the numbers are starting to get worse. So if you can claim planner by generation 3, it sounds good, but it's probably more of a trap because you're delaying your development by buying lots of cards and also paying the 8 MC to actually claim the milestone, which will also hamper your development. I'm not sure if you go down to generation 2, it gets even worse. And you know, getting mayor in generation 2 or even generation 1 is, that's not a great win rate. I wonder who actually was able to claim builder in generation 1. That's insane. But we can filter for different things here. So if I remove this filter again, and one corporation that I find often claims the planner milestone is actually Inventrix, because with Inventrix you start by drawing 3 cards, and just like the nature of the corporation, you know, incentivizes some people to go for planner because it also has a science tag, and sometimes people are hoarding science tags. And also, of course, Inventrix can play cards with requirements earlier, so but you can't play those cards immediately. So it will be typical of Inventrix to sit on a lot of cards with requirements. So all of those things considered, planner is a milestone that is often claimed by Inventrix. As we can see here, it has the highest number of times claimed of all these milestones by Inventrix, but the win rate is not good. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. Inventrix is a relatively poor corporation that doesn't start with any sort of development. And if we do the same thing here, like if you're Inventrix and claiming planner by generation 4 or earlier, you're usually going to lose, just because you're really poor and don't have a lot of development. You just have a lot of cards. This is very typical. We can see here the numbers. But I find it quite interesting to look at these different corporations and see what milestones they actually claim. So let's take, for instance, Ecoline. No surprise, it gets Gardener a lot more than other milestones, but also Terraformer. Makes perfect sense. How about Mining Guild? Of course, Builder. And I guess if we go to Farsis Republic, it's gonna be Mayor, right? And Farsis Republic actually, I wouldn't say it does amazing when it claims Mayor, but at least it's better than the average corporation. If we go to UNMI, we see that it gets Terraformer the most, which this is probably the only corporation that gets Terraformer more than any other milestone. But it's not doing that great, even with Terraformer. It's just not a very strong corporation to begin with. But you can see that if it also gets Gardener, it's usually off to a decent start. And if you go to, let's say, Point Luna, it gets Planner a lot. And the interesting thing here is that Point Luna actually scores quite well when claiming Planner. And this is, of course, because Point Luna draws cards by playing Earth tags, so it can actually get Planner in a more natural way. And this is a common theme I think we'll be seeing more of in this video, that the milestones and awards you can get naturally just by playing your game and playing to your strengths. those are going to have the best win rates and elo performances. While if you have to go out of your way to get a milestone, it's usually going to cost more than it's worth. Out of interest, I just wanted to go ahead and search for my own player account, and I see that I perform really well when claiming milestones. So this should probably tell me that I need to fight more aggressively for milestones, probably, because every time I'm getting one, I'm doing really well. So I should probably aim to get them more often. At least that's my conclusion. Okay, enough about me. Let's look at some other maps. So let's go for Hellas. Not that many games, just thought it'd be fun to see. Tactician has actually a really good win rate. I'm kind of surprised by these numbers, to be honest, because I've always thought that the milestones on Hellas were kind of awkward. And often when we go out of your way to get milestones like Energizer or like Polar Explorer, you're literally going out of your way down in the barren south just to get a milestone, and also Rim Settler. I thought that that would be correlated with not such a great win rate, but these milestones are actually performing pretty well. So I'm not sure how to explain that exactly, but just interesting to note. Okay, let's look at the other map from that expansion, namely Elysium. Here we have Tycoon on top. Now that's kind of more understandable. It has an amazing average elo gain actually. So Tycoon of course requires you to play 15 cards, blue and green cards, and playing lots of cards early means you have a good economy, probably some good things going. So, and you want to be playing cards in Terraforming Mars anyway, so it's more of a natural milestone. Same with Legend. Sometimes maybe you play a few extra events just to get Legend, but usually that's going to be events that aren't that expensive. Like you're not playing Aerobreak Demonia Asteroid just to get Legend. You're usually playing something like Indentured Workers or maybe Hired Raiders or some cheap event just to be able to claim Legend. So I can understand that. And Generalist is on the bottom, which I can sort of also understand, because getting one product of each production is not always an easy task, and if you really need to solve that puzzle and go out of your way to get one of each, maybe you're investing too much in that, And just for fun, let's look at some of the newer maps as well. So let's go Amazonas, Planitia. Not that many games. I thought, one thing we can do, because I happen to know that many of these games were played by one player in particular. So if I just search that player up and look at that, 99% win rate. So this is a player with a very high elo who plays against opponents with a very low elo. So they win a lot of games. And that will affect the numbers you're seeing here for this map. And finally, let's look at Justicia Borealis. I have some experience with this map, so I know that Geologist is a milestone that people often go for, but it's not always that great because the places where you can get that milestone aren't the best areas on the map. Spacefarer apparently pretty good, but it's very few games, so wouldn't really give it too much weight. Okay, so let's head over to the awards section, and again, here we have all the maps, but let's focus on Farsis first. Now, what we can find in this table is the number of times an award was funded, and the generation it was funded, and the elo, the player who funded it, and finally the flip rate, because of course with awards, you're not guaranteed to win it just because you're the one who funded it. And speaking of the flip rate, so one number that really surprised me here was the flip rate for Banker, which is actually almost as low as Scientist, but it's the second lowest flip rate of any award on Farsis. According to conventional wisdom, Banker is notorious for being easily flipped, but it's not exactly what we're seeing here. So maybe it's the case that players are aware of that and they're hesitant to fund Banker because of it, and thus it doesn't get flipped that often. I don't know. But we see, for instance, Miner gets flipped the most, and also Thermalist gets flipped a lot, Whereas, scientist gets flipped the least, which makes sense, I guess. It's much easier to gather some extra minerals or hoard some heat than it is to actually play a lot of science tags. But there are two awards that stand out here, and it's Landlord with the highest win rate, winning 2/3 of all games, and then it's Scientist with actually the highest average elo gain. So without diving too much into the details, I would say that winning Landlord, having a lot of tiles, usually correlated with a high chance of winning the game. Whereas having lots of science tags often means you're really high rolling with an engine strategy. And those engine strategies, when you really hit the jackpot with, let's say, Research Outpost, AI Central, and anti-gravity technology, those are the sort of combination that can cause huge upsets. So for instance, you can have some of the best players in the world actually lose to much weaker players when they're high rolling with the science strategy. So I think that explains why Scientist actually has an average elo gain that is higher than Landlord, despite having a bit of a lower win rate. Thermalist and Miner are not performing well, and there's a pretty good reason for that. Like as we talked about with Milestones, you want to be funding stuff that goes hand in hand with whatever you're trying to do anyway. So for instance, when you're funding Thermalist, that means you're incentivized to no longer spend your heat to terraform. Sometimes that can be a good thing because you're trying to stall out the heat track and avoid ending the game too soon, allowing you to catch up with your engine strategy. But if you're still winning that, it also might mean that you overinvested in heat early on, despite going for an engine strategy. And with Miner, it's even more obvious, I would say. You're funding an award that, in order to win, you're going to need to basically not spend your resources. You're incentivized to not spend your minerals in buying cards. Now, maybe you don't have any good targets for your steel and titanium, and maybe you have too much of those minerals anyway, but that usually means something has gone wrong already. But of course, let's keep in mind that these are aggregated stats, so it's not going to be always the case that Thermalist is bad or Miner is bad. This is just like on average, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's look at Hellas next. Kind of interesting, Space Baron has a very high average elo gain despite having a lower win rate. Usually funded by lower rated players. Kind of interesting. Contractor seems to be the worst, but maybe not, because Eccentric is performing worse in terms of elo. The awards are a bit more close here. Mostly around the middle. Cultivator has the best win rate. Like if you're getting the most greeneries, you're often the player that's winning. That makes sense. But it's actually also flipped a lot, like 14%, where Space Baron is not flipped that often. I would expect some of these numbers just because there's so few games here. Like Space Baron, this average elo gain is probably not sustainable. So just keep that in mind. How about Elysium? Benefactor on top. That makes sense to me. I mean, you want to be terraforming, you want to have a high TR rating, so that should be good. Desert Scepter on the bottom, pretty poor. Like only wins a third of all games and -3 average elo gain. And if you're funding this award, you're basically saying, I'm going to place my tiles in the desert where there aren't that many resources. Like in the north on Elysium, you have lots of oceans and plants and all the good stuff. Well, in the south, you don't have all that much of that. So you're kind of forcing yourself to go in a bad spot. But again, sometimes that could be the right move. And I'm just going to quickly go through some of these other maps because, there's so few games that I wouldn't draw any strong conclusions based on this. Here we have the Highlander Award only being claimed 14 times. Seems the Promoter Award is really, really good. That That's the most event cards, I believe. Yeah, interesting. Amazonas, we talked about this. It's kind of funny here looking at this because Innovator has an extremely high win rate, whereas Manufacturer extremely low. Again, my guess here is just that this is the award that the player we talked about, not the corporation, but the actual player, usually goes for. Yeah. They've claimed or funded, Innovator 165 times, 99.4% win rate. Have a 100% win rate on some of these awards. Yeah. Finally, I should mention that we have another feature that has been around for a while, which is the Leaderboards page. And here we have the top players in terms of claiming different milestones and awards, but we have other categories as well. But if we look at milestones here, let's take, for instance, Terraformer. So these are only the Tharsis milestones, by the way. Look at Terraformer. I definitely recognize some names here. We have Filter, Dialectic, Caden, Stark, Maximum Velocity, GLaDOS, Bagayan, #1 rated BGA player. So, and Thoth the Raven, former #1. Lots of really good players here, and in the top in terms of Terraformer win rate. Gardner, I expect more of the same. We have Aspirin, we have Corvus Mortis, again Mugayon, just some of the best players. Whereas if I go to Mayor, these are probably going to be names that I don't recognize. I don't think I recognize any of these names here. And just like we talked about, Mayor is sort of a weaker milestone because you have to place early cities, which is usually something that strong players tend to avoid. So it's just not a milestone that the stronger players go for that often. And if we go to awards, I expect it'll be more of the same. So if I select Landlords, here we have Baku, we have Corvus Mortis, we have Kulik, the former Arena season winner, the previous season, Highlander MG, lots of strong players that I recognize. Whereas if I go for some of these other awards, it's going to be mostly unknowns. Now, that's not to say that these aren't strong players or good Terraforming Mars players. Most of these are pretty good players. They just aren't like among the top like 10 or 20 players in the world. Okay, so that's enough naming and shaming, I guess. If you want to check out these numbers yourself, you can go to tfmstats.com, and hopefully we'll have some more features coming soon. This one was just launched today with the Milestones and Awards. And if you have any feedback or any requests for new features, just send me a message or comment on this video or whatever. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video and see you around.